and it stays in its form for a long, long time. So we recommend things like manures and other organic matters that actually break down and work into the soil. So manure is another good one. We sell bagged manure. If you got a farm friend with cattle, you can haul the manure in. If it's well rotted, it's not going to have odor. It may still carry weed seeds because weed seeds live for a long, long time. So you might add them in, but in bagged manure that you purchase, it should be sterile, meaning that they've heated it, and so the seeds should not germinate. But I'm not saying they get all of them, but they'll get most of them. If you got an acidic soil, so if you're trying to plant something around an evergreen tree, that is really difficult, but you can use something called dolomite lime, and dolomite lime will neutralize the acidity. This is a basic. If you know the difference between acidic and basic, this adds some basic components to the acid soil, so it neutralizes it so that it can. But
How do you spell that?
Dolomite, dolomite. So you can fix your soil. You have to spend a bit of money doing it, but you can make it more fertile. The word for easily workable soil is called friable. So it means that it's loose. Root crops grow in it easily. They can spread out. How many of you dug potatoes and they come up and they're sort of, you can tell they've been kind of restricted in their growth, and the clay lumps stick to them. And so potatoes, particularly carrots, any of the root crops, they like a friable, and it's Friable. They like a friable soil. So you can again create a friable soil by creating porosity, and that's either with adding, you can throw a little bit of sand in there, or again, organic matter.
Is there one that bags your lawn? What I've done in some instances is kept a little corner of my property. I keep topsoil, and as I dump the bag off my lawnmower, I cover it in topsoil, and I turn it every so often.
Yeah.
And if I get an area of my gardens and that are heavier soils and that, you take and incorporate those bits and pieces
Yeah.
into it, and it will help
Yeah.
get you that friable soil.
Yeah. So you're talking about composting,
Yeah.
and so your lawn clippings can go in the composting pile. Your debris from the garden, provided that you don't have a lot of disease. If you had any diseased plants, you don't want to put that in your compost, but all of that stuff can go in there. Certain household products can go in there. You don't want any fats or bones or anything like that, but lettuce and all that stuff that some people might want. Yeah, I think eggshells are okay, aren't they? Yeah.
You can grind them up in your hand.
Yeah.
They give up the lime and that.
Right.
They,
Yeah.
They actually do a similar effect
To bone
bone
meal.
meals and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Bone meal's another good. We don't talk about bone meal to add to a garden like that. You would add it in a hole when you're planting a tree or something, but certainly that it adds the calcium. So.
Can't you add bone meal around tomato plants?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah. The bone meal can go for a lot of stuff. That one I don't know specifically, but that'd be an excellent one to look up on the internet. But I'm pretty sure, have you heard that bone?
The bone meal that for any kind of bearing vegetables and that they say is good in
Yeah.
moderate. You don't want to overdo it, but it does work well
Yeah.
in moderate quantities.
Right, yeah. Yeah. Yes, so now again, planning, if you're planting a garden, planning is critical. I just put, you want the tall stuff on the north side, so if you like planting sunflowers, you want them on the north side of your garden. You don't want to put them on the south and all of a sudden it's shading everything on the north side of it. So just think about tall coming south with the short. And do you need a fence for climbing, like for peas, if you're putting flowers, if you're putting sweet peas in your garden? Lots of people put cucumbers and the climbing vegetables or the climbing fruit on a vine. I saw someone had a large, kind of almost like a page wire fence, and they leaned it up. So they had kind of an A-frame and they leaned it up. Then they grew the cucumbers, and the cucumbers all fell through, and they just went underneath and picked them off. It was sweet. Like, so you want to think about those things, and if you are planting vines, you got to leave space for them. So you got to think about that ahead of time. And I'm a little stickler for planting things in straight rows because you got to look at it all season. So I have a little story to tell. I was married, and we lived in the country, and we had a big garden. It got smaller every year until finally it was all lawn. But anyway, we had this garden, and Marg enjoyed gardening not quite as much as I did, but she thought she would take a little hand in it. So she decided that she would plant the row of petunias. And it so happened and I'm one of these people, after I've done my work, I like to look at it and say, wow, that looked good, you know. Anyway, so I stood at my bedroom window and looked out, and right straight out my bedroom window was this row of petunias, but it sort of went like this. Anyway, I didn't say anything, but I did go out later, the next night or something, and I straightened it. Anyway, I'm divorced now, and that may have had some effect. So just be careful. Make that a plan. But okay, we agree that we're going to plant straight rows.
What's the easiest way to plant straight rows?
With a string and a hoe. So get your string out, stretch it between two stakes, and then get your hoe.
How many people have seen in their grandmother's garden a couple of whole broken broom handle, a piece of twine wrapped around it?
Yeah.
That's exactly what.
Yeah. And when we don't have any in our gardening kits, but you see some gardening kits, and they will have a ball of yarn and stakes, and that's exactly what it's for. So, and if you, it's not here. I had a garden cedar, and it's a if you got big gardens, which you might have in the country, no. It's all lawn. So you get one row straight with a string, and then you seed it. So you're pushing this thing, and it's got a little mechanism that it pops seeds out every couple of inches, right? And then you get that row, and then it's got a wand out here that it's digging the next row. It's marking the next row. So and then you're coming back doing that row. It flips it over on this side. So then you're marking that row. So then you got a perfectly straight garden. They're all equidistant apart, and if you're tilling, then you set it so that you can run your tiller down, and that's for the big gardens. So,
Is there any particular thing that you can plant not beside each other?
yeah, there's lots of that, and I'm not going to touch that because I don't know them, but all that stuff is in the internet, but it's things like. Marigolds are a good one because they repel bugs.
Right. I'm talking in the garden.
Yeah. So you can plant marigolds with your tomatoes.
Oh, really? My aunt plants them around her entire garden.
Yeah.
Why?
They might keep rabbits, like nothing likes a marigold. Even the deer do not like marigolds.
Stay away from anywhere the marigolds are planted. So if you're in an area where deer have a tendency to come in your property and clean the flowers off, they will stay away from marigolds. As soon as if your strawberries and that around, they say to plant the marigolds within a 4 to 5 feet area of it, and the rabbits and that will stay away from it.
And there are certain insects that don't like marigolds too. So there's also one with basil. Is it basil and tomatoes?
Yeah. And then nasturtiums go really good with cucumber because it keeps away the cucumber beetle.
Okay.
So if you go on like Pinterest, you just do companion garden.
Yeah.
It'll give you a
There you go. Yeah. That's what I was
What
thinking.
about the potato
It's from, they come from the soil, so they put them underneath.
Potato bags?
So, so what you have to do is make sure you rotate your crops.
Okay.
So if you plant potato here 1 year, you make sure you plant the potatoes the next year far away.
Are they gonna keep coming back?
The bug will go to where the potatoes are, right?
Yeah.
So another thing they say to put with it is uranium with the potatoes, and that will keep away the potato bugs. But I don't know necessarily if that works.
We have lots of books at the college library too, for like planting and like complimentary day.
Yeah.
And anybody can come and find books at the library. Yeah, you don't have to be at the library to call it. Where's the XCC library? The main one is at the tab. We have a small one. Oh, okay. And that's where the board. We have books about like what you should find.
Okay, good. Yeah. If you go on to, you can just Google companion. I think it's one of the seed companies, it might be West Coast Seeds, that you go onto their website, they've got all that information also. So, yeah, so there's lots of information about that. The other interesting thing, do you go to the college at ACC?
I worked at the library.
Okay, so in Mexico and a lot of the South American areas, they call the three sisters. So do you know what the three sisters are? Corn, beans, and no, it's a melon. It's a squash. It's a squash, and they grow those three together. So they'll be in a little. So their gardens are these little clumps. They don't worry about the straight rows. So the corn and the beans grow up. The beans grow up the corn stalk, and the squash grows big and round, and it shades the root. It's ingenious, and so they all each
By
one.
shading the roots, it retains the moisture for a longer period and doesn't burn up all the usable nutrients and moisture around it.
Yeah. And corn's roots are relatively shallow, and they spread out this way, and you can see their aerial roots coming out, so it's protecting all of that.
How many corn would you plant in the middle?
Maybe just a couple of plants, but you got this all over. Now, typically we don't use all that much squash. We probably use more corn and beans than we do squash, but yeah, no, but their squash plants are the ones that just, like zucchini, it just stays there, right? It's not a vine. So pumpkin would work, but it's gone all over it.
Squash is a good one to use here because spaghetti squash grows really well here. And it's one of the few squash family members that a lot of people like because if you bake it and pull it out, it's just like spaghetti.
Oh yeah.
And if you're dieting any time, it is extremely good for diet because it's high in water content and very, very few calories. You can eat cups of it.
Yeah, and if you're not dieting, you can cut it in half and fill it full of butter and bacon and onions. Oh,
Now, can you put some spaghetti squash with beans then? Or does it just stay in one clump too?
now ask your question again.
Like the spaghetti squash, can you put it with the beans too?
Yeah. But what they use in the Three Sisters is the climbing bean. So it climbs, so the pods are forming up the stalk.
Yeah, which I'm talking like yellow or green beans, that would kind of look.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking the bush ones. The squash might shade out a bush bean, but the climbers would be good. That's what they use it for, yeah.
See, last year I planted my squash at one end and the beans at the other end. And then I put beets and carrots and everything, but my squash took over my beets and my carrots.
Yes, yeah. So whatever you're planting with the squash has got to come above it.
Right, okay.
Yeah, yeah. So, but that's the Three Sisters. So you can keep that in mind. The other thing is timing. So for maturity, so your potatoes can go in early. Like lots of people get them in And there may even be a little bit of snow around, but lots of people get their potatoes in really early, and then you're eating fresh potatoes because they're protected, right? They're underneath. Peas can go in quite early. So you can stagger, and oftentimes if you've got a big pea crop, they'll stagger plant your peas so that you've always got fresh peas coming off.
You find some people will stagger planting potatoes so that they've got that early crop of baby potatoes that carries on for a few more weeks because of the second and third plantings.
Yeah. And then your later planting would be the ones that you store.
Yeah.
So then you may choose to select varieties, some that are better for fresh eating and some that are better for storage. So you can be selective on your variety. And if you're talking about flower gardens, then you also want to time so that when specific flowers come into flower, so it should state on your flower package exactly when they're, or roughly when they're going to flower. So then you can stagger your flowering. Water and fertility. I'm just saying, you know, in these days when we're conserving, we don't really want to be doing a whole lot of watering. It's really critical in the spring startup. Typically that's when we have more moisture. So often you don't have to water, but if it's a dry spring, you're going to have to give it enough to get started. And then hopefully once it's going, then it's going to send its roots down. Or if we're in a really dry spell, you got to water. Of course, that's when the city's going to say, "Hey, be careful," you know, because we're short of water. But that's just one of the things you got to work with. Fertility isn't a huge thing with vegetable gardens, but what some people do will go out with a fairly low level of fertility, like a 2 to 5 nitrogen. You know the 3 numbers: nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, NPK. It'll be, so if you go with low numbers, you can do it either in the fall or the spring and just broadcast it over your garden, work it in, and it's ready for spring. So you don't really have to do anything once it's planted, typically. And maintenance, regular weeding in a garden, either your flower or vegetable garden, and then I put deadheading if you got a flower garden. If you deadhead, it just stimulates more flowers to come. Harvest, obviously, it's before frost, and I'm saying make it a family affair. That's when it pays off, when you're digging all the crop up, and if you can get the rest of the kids or whoever involved, if you can handle that, it's a fun time to get everybody out and going. And for fall maintenance, as I mentioned before, get rid of the diseased plants, so either dispose of them somehow, either if you're in town and get rid of them through the garbage. If you're in the country and you can do a little bit of burning, you could burn it up to get rid of it because you don't want that disease spreading. Because the spores will, particularly if it's a mildew or something, those spores stay around. I didn't talk about raised gardens, but a raised garden, if you're short of space, a raised garden's a nice way to go. Plus it's convenience, right? So it's here instead of here. So they're kind of nice. It's an investment. Any of you got a raised garden or access the community raised gardens?
I helped out with some of the community ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So typically people don't, in their own backyards, don't build them quite that high.
They're usually narrower.
Yeah, narrower and maybe only 2 4x4s high instead of, yeah.
We did one last year with 5-foot garden with only using 6-inch cedar,
Okay.
and it looked really good.
So 5 feet square?
5 feet square and only 6 inches.
Yeah.
Instead of doing the double, the 12, I just did the 6.
Okay.
And as long as you put good soil in with your manure
Yeah.
and everything, it is an excellent crop.
Good.
Now you can do carrots and that.
Okay. Yeah. Now, so 5 feet, so you had to get in it.
Yes, and that's the only thing, because I'm really short, I'm only 5 feet, so it's a little difficult to climb. So I'm gonna actually, like, you just go by the cedar fence boards.
Yeah.
And cedar is the best ones that doesn't rot. And you just go by them for $3.50. So I didn't have to cut, I didn't have to do anything other than make little posts so you
Okay.
So this year though, I'm going to make longer ones, cut the cedar posts in half, and just make like more of a strip. But that 6 inches was enough to grow. I did peas, I did cucumbers, I did carrots, I did beets. I did a turnip, but the beetles got it.
Oh,
How did you find the grass? So did it come up under the floor?
What I did is I laid down some cardboard,
Okay.
and then I put different on top. So there's a mix, if you go online, you can
So it
see,
was only 6 inches deep?
it's only 6 inches deep. Just the width of the hole.
yeah, so quack would come through that.
You know what, it was really good, like nothing came through,
It-
but not seed coming from dandelion that way, not very much at all, like that cardboard down first really stopped that.
So cardboard and then
Then, and then.
Poly would be ideal to stop it from anything coming out.
so
Yeah,
it's like thicker than landscape.
yeah.
Right, so the only problem with poly is in the soil moisture can't percolate up.
Well, yeah, I didn't use it because I was worried about that, like it's too much about vapor.
Yeah, but you could put landscape fabric down.
You could,
Yeah,
yeah. But the cardboard, I tried with that and that was okay, at least last year.
Yeah.
You did show my head.
yeah,
It would probably work well for a year. When the
Yeah.
cardboard
Yes.
breaks down.
Then
Yeah.
the cardboard's great.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Good point. Okay, nothing more about gardens. I want to touch a little bit about lawns. So the question that you have to decide is, do you want to seed your lawn? If you want to create a new lawn, your two options are to seed it or to sod it. And it's really a question of money and time. So if you've got money and no time, go for sod. If you don't have money and you got lots of time, go for seed.
Remember Bernie touched on the peat loss? In our climate here, for contracts at Shiloh, we do not recommend peat sod at all. I've seen peat lawns that have been put down in our climate, that you can go back 6 months later and pick the sod up off the ground. Because as Bernie stated, the grass is happy within that little zone.
Yeah, yeah,
Look for mineral sod in
yeah.
our area.
Go for mineral, and peat looks beautiful. It's really a beautiful, lush green. It's thick. Mineral doesn't look that way, but mineral will give you a lot better lawn in the end. So we sell sod to the when the Arabian Horse Show comes to town. So they want to decorate their stalls. So we've been given the contract to supply all the shrubs and flowers that they decorate their stall with, and we bring in 4 or 5 pallets of sod, and they buy this sod at sod prices and they roll it out in their, but it's always peat sod because it looks beautiful.
It'll live within
Just-
within its structure.
Yeah, you got to water the heck out of it. Yeah, I mean you can get it to establish, but you've got to invest a lot of water.
And with peat sod, if you are going to use it as a product in the market, it's a root binder. And what it does is you apply it to it and it forces the roots of the plant to go down. And that's the key to a lot of sods, is to get that root go outside of that zone that you cut them off at.
Yeah, yeah.
Because when the roots have been cut off, they stool, which is, they go this way, am I correct?
Yeah, yeah,
So ideally, a root binder is a product that's put into it that forces the root to go down, to chase the moisture down below.
yeah, yeah. Good point. So again, it's important that your soil is prepared. So ideally, you've gotten rid of all the weeds. That's not so easy today. We're the after Roundup days. I'm still sorry about that because I love Roundup, but because it would clean that up. But Roundup is not as friendly word anymore. So the best you can is to get rid of it, and whether it means working it up. It's hard with quackgrass. That's your biggest issue. Because if you dig it, then you've chopped up those rhizomes and you've just made that many more plants. But if you are digging it, then be sure you get it raked up and get all those roots raked up. And you know, people that have beautiful lawns, they're out there. You know, they're out there with one of these taking out the quackgrass by hand. A lot of them. So it's a what do you call it when you love doing hard work? But
Same as the dandelion.
yeah, very much, yeah. Yeah. Labor of love. That's what I was trying to say, a labor of love. Yeah, so you got to get rid of all the roots, rocks, and have it level. That's where you're talking about that nice big wide rake, because it fills in all the divots and everything. And then what they typically do is once they've got it level, then they'll run over with the packer, and that kind of then again shows up where those soft spots were, so you kind of got to come again and level it up again. And then once they lay the sod down, then you go back and roll it again so that you get contact between the roots and the soil. And then you got to water for days until it takes. If you're going to seed, you kind of got to do the same thing for your soil bed preparation, and then you scatter the seed. Now, the water is even more critical with seed because it has to stay consistently wet. So what you'll often see out there is somebody that's when they're just seeding a patch, they'll have an old burlap bag on top of it, and that's just to keep it shaded until the seeds germinate, and it can take up to 10 days to germinate. The other thing that I have done in the past, and I suggest to people, if you're seeding a large space, then retain all your grass clippings and then go over and sprinkle them on top. Be sure they're not full of dandelions and other weed seeds, but sprinkle them on top, and then give your seed some protection, because they're just like threads. So if it germinates and then you get a blazing hot day, it's going to bake those things, and you're back to square one again. So you got to give your seeded lawn some protection. Some people have put poly over it. It creates moisture into there, but on a hot day, it gets so hot in there you're going to cook it. So I wouldn't really recommend poly, unless it's a poly weave or something.
The other thing is there's ideal times of the day to apply your water to get the most out of it. If you go out after you're done with supper and as the sun's starting to go down, and you give it a good misting for a lawn, especially seeded areas and that, it gets the most out of that moisture overnight, because as the temperature drops, it draws the moisture down into the soil. During the day, the sun will actually cook. It evaporates and goes up into the atmosphere.
Right. Yeah, you see a lot of people, the old spray wand is going all through the sunny day, and half of it's going up there and the other half's going down here, and your water bill's only going one way, right? So there's no need to pay for water to go back up into the atmosphere. So evening or early morning also can work.
Or if you're inclined, you can do it at half of it that evening, and the next morning if you get up, as I do at 5 in the morning, you can water.
Yeah. So the thing about watering also, once your lawn is well, for seed, you don't have to water that long. You just have to get the seed wet and say the top inch or so. But when your lawn is established, you want to water deep. So if you're going to water deep, because you want the water to go right down. If you just water in the top, then the roots are going to stay there. And then you go away for your 2-week holiday, and that's when the heat comes. These roots are up here. This all dries out, and they don't have enough time to get down here to get the moisture. So the only way they're going to come down here is if you water deep. So there's a lot of people that just, they're going to water the lawn and they'll sprinkle it, and the grass is wet and it feels nice, it smells good, it's enough, can't afford any more. They would have been way better off not to water at all.
I feel if you aerate every couple of years, a trick golf courses do is they aerate, they broadcast sand on the ground. and run it in with a fan rake. What happens is plugs that are pulled out of the ground, they rake and sand fills the plugs, and it allows the moisture to get down into the root bed. It doesn't absorb as quickly into the top, it's down into the root zone.
Yeah, which is one of the, leads me to the next point was spring and fall maintenance. So one of them is aeration, fertilizing. I've got an issue about fertilizing lawns because the more you fertilize, the more you got to mow. So if you're going to fertilize, it's going to look nice and green, a nice dark green color, but you got to mow more. So that's the trade-off. So you want a nice lawn, you got to mow more. You got to fertilize. So and then mowing, I was going to look this up, but there's a height that you want to be. A lot of people like this really short, but you're doing your grass no favor by mowing too short. So keep it a nice, I would say 2 to 3 inches.
2.5 to 3 inches is
Two-
recommended.
Yeah.
Cut frequently. Don't allow it to get more than about 4 to 5 inches, because if you leave it for long periods of time and you cut it, you stunt the grass because you shock it. If you keep your lawnmower blade very sharp and cut once a week, you will have the best looking lawn.
Yeah.
I can show you pictures.
Yeah, and you've got the best looking lawn on the lot, on the street.
On the street, yes.
There you go.
I have neighbors that come and they don't understand how theirs are burnt to a crisp and mine stays. But I leave my lawn, the wheels of the lawnmower set almost as high as they'll go. But I leave, when I'm done cutting it, set long.
Yeah, and by cutting it frequently, also, if you do have weeds, you're lopping the tops off. So it does helps monitor the weed. And if you also, the aesthetic part about what he's saying is if you leave it too long and then you go cut it, then you got this,
It's a mess on the lawn.
it looks awful. Because you got all the blades up here and all you got is the stalk down here. So you want to keep it so that the blades are down here. So, any other lawn questions? Yeah.
How do you kill alfalfa?
Yeah, alfalfa's a tough one.
A lot of the time you end up digging the plant because they're again,
It's a deep, deep root.
and the roots will migrate and come up all around. But I found the largest of it, especially in town here, I got a good lot of it's on oil.
Yeah.
To get rid of that.
There are some products on the market. This one's called Weed Out. It's got a picture dandelion there. It's got white clover. Probably would work with chickweed. These are kind of glorified vinegar. Like if you went out and sprayed vinegar, it would kill the top. It'll kill the top. But in the day of organic product that we're in now, we can't use 2,4-Ds and those things that were very effective. So there are some organic products. It's going to kill a broadleaf weed, but top growth. So it's probably going to come back. But if you're in the country, good luck with your alfalfa, because it's a really, really deep. Yeah. And it's alfalfa. Now I should know this. Yeah, that plant it's more than a 1 year. Sweet clover is a biennial. Alfalfa might be perennial.
Alfalfa will keep coming.
Yeah.
You can,
Yeah.
It'll always,
Yeah.
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 I
Yeah.
always know it's time to cut the grass.
Yeah.
And you'll find
Well, you know that
Before
like
it seeds.
farmers grow it for hay, and so they'll have an alfalfa crop they'll leave down for 5 years.
And
So
alfalfa
it's-
also, a lot of farmers use it if they have heavy saline soil. You ever see big white patches in the dirt in the farmer's fields that don't grow anything? If you plant alfalfa, it takes it into the nodes that are down below. If you leave it for 3 to 4 years in the alfalfa, and then take your final cut and then turn it back into the soil. Those nodes release and it takes up the acids in the soil, and you can crop it for 3 to 4 years.
Yeah. And
what do they call
it fixes nitrogen, the nodes?
The nodes.
Yeah. So alfalfa is a legume, like peas, beans, alfalfa, even carragana. They're legumes. They produce pods with seeds in them, and it fixes nitrogen in the soil. So it takes nitrogen that would normally not be available to plants. It takes it in its system and it makes these nodules, and it makes that nitrogen available to the plant and to other plants. So it's a good thing. Yeah, I mean it's actually improving the stability of your soil to have alfalfa there.
There again, it's one of those things.
Yeah.
Good for a span of time, and then you've got to try and
Yeah.
turn the soil over or something to try and get
It's not nice in a lawn because this thing gets like a hunk of carrot, and it hurts when you're walking on it. So if you're in bare feet.
Well, the thing is too, it'll grow this tall in your grasses.
Yeah, and you're right, it grows fast, yeah. Okay, anything else about lawns? Okay, just 2 little things left here. Trees and shrubs. So I talked a bit before, you got to know the mature size, particularly with trees, know the mature size that you want, particularly in small lots, because there's trees can grow 60 feet tall, and if you've only got a spot for them that you really only wanted a 20-foot tree, then you've all of a sudden got a problem in your hands, and the next thing you know, you're hiring somebody to cut this tree out. So, and the other thing is, if you are planting, let's say you've got a window right here, and you've got this shrub underneath it. We've got enough variety of shrubs now that you can buy the shrub that fits that space. So go through all the tags and say, I only want thing it's going to grow 4 feet tall. Go through all the plants in the nursery. You will find a shrub that grows 4 feet tall. So there's no need in this situation, if you want short ones here and then a little taller here and nice and tall there, there's no need to buy stuff that you have to prune. If it's shrubs, plant it, what it's going to be when it's finished, you're done. All you got to do is keep the weeds out underneath. So that's the beauty of all the trees and shrubs now. Go through, do your research, you will find one that fits the size that you need. If you want a big wide one for shade, that's great. You're not going to put that one in here because it's going to hit your house and probably hit theirs. You can put it back here. If you want a tree in here, there's a tree for that. They're tall columnar, and they just maybe only grow that wide around, but they could be 20 feet tall, so they could be along here so that you're not looking in their bathroom or they're not looking in your bathroom window or your bedroom window and finding out what you do at night. So there's lots of options that are designed to do exactly what you want. Know your hardiness. We got problems now because we got a lot of elm trees. Our beautiful elm trees are going down with Dutch elm disease, particularly in this end of town. We're close to the river. That's where the bugs come in from. I had just a gorgeous tree. I live right here in the yellow house, and I lost one. They took it down last winter. I was so upset. It was just an absolutely beautiful American elm tree. And I saw one branch go yellow in one spring, and it was dead that fall. Just like that. Now we got ash borer. So that's the next problem. We thought once we got away from, well, we're not away from the Dutch elm, but we were hoping that's the only one. We thought the emerald ash borer was in Thunder Bay. It is now in Winnipeg. So it's coming. So far they haven't detected anything in Brandon, but the trick with ash and elm is do not move the wood. So if you're looking for some firewood, use the firewood where you're burning the fire. Like, don't transport it, because there's a good chance there's beetles in there, and then you've just moved the population. So be very strict. You know, it's as strict as we don't drink and drive anymore because it's not a good thing to do. Don't move wood. It's as critical as that. Like, it's a serious thing.
You'll find arborists very, very particular when they will cut those trees and what they will do with them.
Yeah.
That's why the city, you'll see sometimes in the winter, burns off piles of them along
Yeah.
the river and that.
Yeah. And my tree, they came well, it was just before Christmas a year ago, and that's when they took it down. Because these things aren't mobile in the Christmas time.
It's
So.
an active season
Yeah.
for the bugs. So when they're in the dormant stage, that's usually when they will take the tree down and then dispose of the trees.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to try just a little demo here. Do you want me to quit it? It's 9. Are we okay?
Yeah, I mean,
Anytime?
yeah.
Okay. So we'll do a little tree planting demo here. See how we do. I think I got more than 6 inches of soil here. I think this was one of the questions on that I had been sent. And we're going to pretend this is an evergreen tree. It's a Norfolk Island pine, so it's pretty close.
What is this tree called?
This is a Norfolk Island pine. It doesn't normally have the sparkles, but it got sparkled at Christmas time and they never left.
So don't expect the sparkle.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Yeah. So, planting a tree is a relatively simple procedure. You can hand this out around. On the back of it is planting trees and shrubs, so that's for your... And by the way, when we sell you a tree here, it's got either a 1-year 50% warranty or a 5-year 100% warranty. For the 5-year 100%, and you'll find this at a lot of garden centers, to get a 5-year warranty, 100%, you have to purchase mic. So, you know, when you go and buy a TV at Best Buy or wherever you know, they always upsell you a warranty. Well, this is what we do in the plant business. We upsell this is kind of like your warranty. So if you buy the mic, then you get a 5-year warranty. So what mic does, it's a bacteria, so it sounds bad, but it infects the roots of the plant, and then as they move out, this bacteria grows mycelia, so like its little legs, and the mycelia extends beyond the roots. It collects nutrients and moisture, pulls them back in for the root, for the plant to use. So it's beneficial. It's a beneficial. So it's just a granular. I'll open it, and that's what it looks like. So even though it's a dry powder, you can pass that around.
How much do you put in?
So for a tree this size, so this would be a 2-gallon tree. Okay, so there's the root ball, and where that might go, and I'm going to take about a handful, okay, or a cup. So that's about all you need. I'll get here so that you can sort of, and then you're going to rub that around the root ball. So you want it to be in contact to that. You're going to drop a little bit. I should have dug the hole first. So typically you would use your round mouth or a square mouth shovel, and you want your hole to be about twice as wide as this. So if this is a foot, then you want your hole to be about 2 feet wide, okay? And just slightly deeper than this, okay? So let's say we got our hole dug, and now you're going to plant that thing. You put your mic on. You may have put some, if you don't use mic, then you can use bone meal. If you don't want the 5-year warranty, you can use bone meal. And if your soil is a heavy clay or something, then you can also put manure in here. But again, we don't recommend peat moss. And that was what everybody bought a bag of peat moss and they planted it. But then the roots just stayed happy right there. So, okay. So the biggest trick here is to plant it, but you don't want any soil on top of this root ball. So when you backfill, then you're going to backfill around there and keep the top of the root ball as it was, okay? And if that's below the surface, that's a good thing, because when you water, you want the water to pool there so that it runs down. So some people have even, made a little moat around there so that it holds water. But it's that simple.
So question, when you're planting in a planter, when you're backfilling, do you want to cover all of the...
You want to cover the root ball, but not the top of it. So here's the root ball, right?
So
The top
say
of
that's a flower in a planter, say for example,
yeah.
you don't want to cover the root ball of it when you backfill.
A flower is a little different. You could some you can cover, but trees you do not, because if I did this like this, what's going to happen? This is going to rot,
Yeah,
and then your tree's dead.
right.
So you don't want to cover any of that. Now some, well, let's talk about tomatoes. If you want to, tomatoes you can cover it right up to here. You can take that whole stalk and it'll root all the way down. So that's why people will buy, you might come home with let's say we sold you a 1 gallon tomato and there's all this root. You could strip all those leaves off, lay it down flat, like lay it horizontal in a row, cover it up, and it'll root all the way along. It'll be a healthy plant. Just leave the end up and that will keep growing. Tomatoes about the only thing you can do that with. But with a tree, you don't want to cover that root, you don't want to cover the top of the root ball, because it'll rot.
I've always explained it is with a tree in the plantings, anything that originated above the ground is the breathable part. Anything that was below the ground was okay underwater. So, breathable, moisture.
Now, say that again, okay underwater?
Well, or moisture conditions.
Okay, all right. Yeah,
As you will drown it. The plant,
Yeah.
The plant still takes on moisture or oxygen through the root system, but it's with the moisture content as well.
right,
There's a certain amount of oxygen that they take in that
yeah,
root too, but a lot of it's taken in from above
Yeah.
the soil line.
right, yeah. So the reason why your hole's twice as wide is because then you can put manure or an amended soil down there just to give it a nice little start, not peat moss. Okay, so that's why you dig it as wide. Now I get kind of lazy if I was planting a tree and it was nasty soil to dig. I might not go twice as wide and get it big enough to get the root ball in there and sort of say good luck, because I'm not digging a bigger hole. That's too much work. But really, if you can, you want to dig a bigger hole and so you can get some manure or something.
For fruit trees, what's the trick to planting fruit trees?
Same thing.
Is
Yeah.
it to plant them in multiples or like for pollination?
Oh, okay. For pollination, yeah. There again, you need to check. You need to check that in your garden center. People will tell you what other plants you need around. So there always needs to be, with fruit trees, you need the pollination. So sometimes you do need, if there's nothing else in the neighborhood, you're pretty safe in the city, because if it's bumblebees, bumblebee will travel 8 miles. So you're pretty safe. But in the country, if there's nothing around you, then you gotta be sure you plant something else. And it doesn't have to be 2 of the same varieties. Like some things can cross-pollinate.
So how far apart would you plant them?
Well, okay, so you've looked on the internet, and you've said, okay, this tree grows. Let's say it's going to grow 15 feet wide and 25 feet tall. So 15 feet wide, so that means from the center out to here is 7.5, right? So you got to be at least 7.5 feet out, and then however wide that tree is going to grow. So let's say it's the same tree. Now that's another 7.5, so that's 15 feet. So at least 15, but you might want some space here. So probably 20. If you're using that, if it's that size of tree.
Determine if you're using it as a windbreak or something,
Exactly.
or something to look at.
Yeah.
Sometimes if it's being utilized as a windbreak, you might want to crowd it.
Crowd it, yeah.
So that
So the branches are,
they close off.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Orchard, if you're planting a bunch of trees and you want to leave space to get in and around. Move your step ladder to pick apples. I don't know if this is gonna, it might not stay there. And I'll have to put it back in its pot here because I can't sell it in a wheelbarrow.
No. You have to get twice the money.
Oh, didn't like that either. Oh, well, this is how you repot it, just like that. There we go. Okay, I want to talk about one last thing, and that is pruning. And I don't have a real good specimen. This is a fig tree, but I can clip some of the branches off of this one. So you can see that none of the branches are very big. So I'm okay to use these pruners, right? And there's not really, well, there's a fair bit of science behind pruning a tree. This one obviously had some issues. And pruning is most critical with fruit trees because particularly apple, you know how a lot of trees got, let's say one leader, main leader going way up. So some apples will do that, but you don't want that on an apple tree because if this is 20 feet tall, you're never going to get up here to pick these apples, right? So you kind of want to have what they call an open center. So you don't want to have a central leader. You want these branches to be kind of going out this way so that you can come up underneath and pick all around. If you're training a spruce tree, then you only want this, right? You only want one leader going up because sometimes if you're not careful, it will get 2 leaders, and then once the trees mature, it's got 2 leaders, and they don't look very attractive. So that's, but there's some things to look for in when you're pruning. So you want to remove things like this, dead, right? So get rid of all the dead wood. Anything that's dead or unsightly, or if it's cracked, that's one of the first things. Or if there's a diseased branch, you want to cut that out, okay? Then once you got rid of the dead and the disease, you start looking at the overall structure of your tree. And so what you're trying to end up with is maybe not to make the thing beautiful today, but you want it to grow beautiful. So you've got to, I was reading something that said the minute you plant a tree is the minute you start training your tree. So it's kind of like raising your kids, right? As soon as they're born, we start teaching them things, or would like to teach them things. So here's a branch right in here. So see this little wee branch here? It's crossed over. So you don't want, and any tree, whether it's a fruit tree or it never happens with spruce trees, but often with deciduous, you've got some branches that are crossing over, and as they get bigger, they're going to start rubbing in each other, and that's going to be an issue. So you take those sorts of things out. So anything that's crossing over, this one could end up being an issue. So we might take that one out. Hopefully this thing is saleable when I'm done with it. What other things do we need to think about? Now, or there's, particularly on fruit trees, you get something called a spur. So it'll be on a branch that's, say, coming out sideways like this one. I don't think there's anything, this is a fig tree, by the way, so it doesn't really perform anything like that. Well, let's call this one here. See, it's growing straight up and it's coming up the center. You don't want anything of that. You want all these lower branches growing out this way. So you would take anything that's growing up the center that we would call a spur, you're going to take that out. Okay. And then you're going to want to just do general cleanup. This one, somebody made a mess of it at some point in time, but you clean up all this kind of this dead wood that's going on in here. There's nothing on that one. So that kind of thing you do. Here's a little spike of nothing going on in it. And the other thing to think about is when you're cutting it, I like to, well, the rule is to cut it flush with the next main trunk. So you don't want to leave a stump. Oh, where's a stump? I actually cut one off here. Where did I? Did I throw another branch somewhere? Well, can you see? That guy's too small. Anyway, they cut it off. They left a stub on it. Well, a stub can't, a tree wants to heal over the wound, and you want it to heal over the wound. But if you leave a stump, it's where let's cut something off here and leave a stump on it. Well, I'm just going to cut this one here. So see this branch? I'm going to cut it like this. Okay, so I left a stump there. Well, that can't do anything. It can't heal because it won't heal over the end. So you have to cut it off flush with the next main trunk. I'm going to take that a little closer. So now that can heal over that. That can heal over there. Okay, and there's also there's a collar. And I can't really see them so good on this tree, but you could on an apple tree. So well, you can sort of see here, there's a little bit of a collar there. So you can see how the trunk, the bark is just a wee little bit different here than it is there. So you're going to cut on this side of the collar, okay? Because the collar is what, you can sort of see it there. It's more evident on an apple tree. Can you sort of see the difference right there? So you got, if you were pruning this branch off, you'd cut on this side of the collar. It's sort of right in there. Not really that visible on this one, but so you want to leave the collar. So there's just going to be a tiny little bump there where you cut it off. Otherwise it needs to be. Oh, did she do a job? I knew she was. Pacing. I thought something was up. Thanks. You didn't have to do that. Anyway, those are just kind of some of the tips about pruning. It's basically clean up and making it look just a little bit more presentable. Getting rid of the dead wood is most of it. And again, pruning on a fruit tree is much more critical than on a tree like this. Let's say this was an elm or an ash. You're doing it just to make it look attractive, but on an apple tree, you're doing it because you want it more accessible. So again, there's a ton of stuff on the internet about pruning, how to prune it. We might have watched a little video that was on there if we had time, but there's a lot of good stuff on the internet. But have the right pair of tools. If this was, do you know, are you familiar with Schubert chokecherry? So it's the dark purple tree, and then it gets, I have a term for it, but I shouldn't use it on public broadcast system, but it's called black knot. I call it something on a stick. Do you know what I'm talking about? And that what was on the ground. Yeah. If you're pruning that kind of stuff off, then have a bucket of Javix, and every time you take a cut, dip this in it so you're not spreading the.
Anytime you're dealing with a diseased portion of a plant and a pruner should be cleaned regularly. Yeah. So. Anyway, that's kind of all I wanted to say. I did mention that I wanted to talk a little bit about tropicals, and just because I have a new love of tropicals, I was telling Leanne I had the pleasure of going down to
Fort Lauderdale in January. And of course, that's tropical country down there. And we were at a tropical plant expo, and then we went and visited a tropical farm. We saw one farm that had 800,000 of these under one expansive roof. It was unbelievable. Bigger than this one, Boston fern. And everyone was sold. But what I came home with was that we shouldn't be afraid to let them go, because we don't have, our homes aren't in Manitoba. They're not designed to house tropical plants for a long time. We bring them in, we should enjoy them for a year or maybe a year and a half, and when they get ugly, chuck them. But we're hanging on. There's this one little branch coming up here and a few down there, and there's a leaf left, and so, oh, I can't throw it out, you know. And it's easy for me to say because I got a house full and I want to sell you another one, right? So I got to be careful how I say that. But we had this idea that tropical plants should last for 2 to 5 years. Well, they're not gonna. So don't be afraid to buy a tropical plant and enjoy it for a year. We throw out our annual baskets, and we pay 50, 60, 70 bucks to put an annual basket together. That costs 30. So spend the money and enjoy it for a winter or two and let it go. And the other thing about tropicals is use them in your planters, in your summer planters. This would be beautiful with, you know, doesn't that look nice with the geranium? Something tall like a king tut. You know, wouldn't that look nice? So don't be afraid to use a tropical in your annual planters. And you know what? If you got it in the house in time, maybe you can have the whole thing in the house. Bring the geranium and the fern and because they will live for a while, and you'll get another half a season out of it. So that's my new lease on life with tropicals.
Do you have any other suggestions of plants to put in a planter? Like in an outside planter?
Yeah, again, I'm not going to go there. I'm not. We've got people that are experts in that. But what I'm on their case about now is to use do you know what Sansevieria is? Do you know mother-in-law's tongue? That long green. It's long and it's almost a cactus-like, and it's beautiful, and it's a tropical plant, but it would go nice in a planter.
What did you call it?
Sansevieria or mother-in-law's tongue, yeah, or snake plant,
Or snake plant, right?
yeah.
And it's one that'll last your house for a long time.
Yes, yeah. So planters, you want to have vine, so potato vine, ivy, any of those ivies and trailers, we call them. Geranium is always a favorite, but it's the old favorite. There's so many different things that you can experiment with. You just got to come to a greenhouse and go through our section over there. It's called fillers, and just go to town. And the pictures will show you the color of the flowers, and it'll tell you how tall they're going to get, and just experiment.
Don't be afraid to experiment.
Yeah.
I start pots on my front home. I have 6 that I put out. And I change it up every year. I'll walk through selection here. I go out with a cartload of all different colors. And people used to spread out plantings, and I found that, especially in planters, overplanting.
Yes.
Fill the darn thing with all different colors and variations of sizes and how they stool up. You can always take and cut out what you don't like, but it'll take over that planter to the point where they start cascading because they can't grow any other way.
Yeah.
And you'll get some of it, as you say, the taller ones that'll come up, but the rest will start to cascade and get big and beautiful.
I had A lady friend of mine told me about Christmas cake. She said if a little bit of fruit in it is good, then a whole lot more is better. Same thing for planter. I've seen planters where it was a nice big planter and she put 3 plants. 1, 2, 3. It didn't look nice.
And you'll find
It
a
never-
lot of the time, if you underplant in a planter, you'll have more dead plants in it because the more larger grouping of plants shades the soil
Yeah.
that's available to them and maintains proper moisture for them. Make certain the drainage in the pot is proper as well. Then you can't overwater them. I stand and water mine until it runs out the whole bottom.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I did last year, but I just,
Yeah. So if you like to plant your own, we always have a bunch done. And so that would give you some ideas on but again, match shade and sun.
yeah,
Don't be,
that's full time.
okay, yeah. So you got a lot of options for flower. More flower than if you were full shade. But don't be afraid to use drops. There's full sun drops. And but yeah, and then take good notes. So take notes or take pictures of what you planted this year, and if you don't like it, then you know what not to repeat. If you do like it, then you've got some ideas for next year.
You know
So
the little spike that comes on the plants that tells you what they were? Keep them in a, I always take a baggie out in the bulk spring when
Yeah.
I'm planting. I drop them all in there. And
This little guy.
I mark the year that I pump them in.
Yeah.
So that I can remember what I plant. Because you ever go to next year and say, well, what the heck did we plant
Yeah.
here last time?
there's lots of our customers that bring the little baggie with them. They bring this in, and then there's some ticked off if we don't have that variety again. But we do change up varieties. But we got to be ready for it because they want that one because it did well and it had this color and it. Sophie. Anyway. Well, it's been fun having you here. Sorry I've rambled on. I think, oh, I don't have near enough material, and then here we are. But you had excellent questions. I know you all have a good sense of gardening yourself, so my apologies if some of the stuff was redundant to what you already know, but that's what I know, and and there's a lot more knowledge out there, but don't hesitate to go on the internet. We have on our website, so www.greenspotbrandon.com, on the front page, there's a little button on there that's about that big, and it's called Plant Search. Click on that, and then it'll give you a form to fill out. It's a bunch of filters. If you want a 20-foot tree, put in tree, and where it asks for height, put in 20 feet, and all the 20-foot trees will come up that are in our zone. Okay, so it's done all that work for you. Then you just got to go through pick the ones you want, and print the list off, and bring it in, and we'll sell it to you. How's that? And it's all the annuals are in there, all the perennials, all the trees and shrubs. It's a huge list. It's done for us. We just have to tell them what zone we're in. And it could be that we don't have that plant, but we can get it because it's in our zone. So make use of that tool. It's really helpful. And then you can, there's nothing in there but companion plants. But so.
I think I can speak for everyone, Bernie. One of the highlights of the course for me over the period of time that I've had it, I think everybody has come away with something that they can utilize. I'd personally like to thank you for your time and the availability of this great space for
Good.
us. It's a super place for us to come.
Good. Well, I'm sorry it wasn't any place other than the shop, but it seemed to be the only place that we had that we could kind of spread
The
out.
thing
So.
is, spring is kind of teasing us right now. This gives everybody a little bit of thirst for their yards and what have you, and some of the things around their homes.
Yeah. Now, are you continuing on like you do? You've got other sessions coming?
Well, what we're talking about is just having one session next week. I'll let you talk about it, Dennis.
We're just going to have one evening at Boston Pizza where everyone's going to get together, and we're just going to have kind of an informal wind-up sort of
Okay.
for the course. It's been 10 weeks that we've done this. We used to do it for 16 weeks.
Oh, okay.
And we pared it down a little. They've been a great bunch. I think some of them wish they would carry on some nights.
Okay.
Some nights I carry on too much.
Well, yeah, hopefully I may have too. But I was going to say, you're welcome to, if some of you want to get together, I'd be quite happy to give you a tour. We didn't really get to see anything other than the front, but we're not all planted yet. We got quite a bit of it, but you know, if 3 or 4 or whatever wanted to get together, and April is the best time. That's when we're the fullest. Better towards the end of April, beginning of May, and that's when, if you were able to come in the daytime, then the staff is planting and everything's happening, so you can kind of see what goes on back here. And I'd be quite happy to do that. So
Maybe we'll put an email out asking people if
Sure.
they're interested.
Yeah.
We'll get back to you.
and then just let me know. And we toured this year. We had 30 classrooms, 30 schools of 700 kids. Yeah. Yeah, it was amazing. And we run them, we split the groups up and we take some tour and then some plant a pot this size and they'll put 3 little annuals in it. We just said that 3 is not enough, but that's all we let them do. A marigold and a pansy and a petunia or something. And they take that home generally around Mother's Day. So they go home happy, they pay a toonie for it. And so if any of you got kids at school, then suggest they come because they do have lots of fun with it. So.